You're tuned in to the Dakota Housing Network on SuperTalk 1270 and SuperTalk1270.com. In-depth discussion and analysis of real estate issues nationwide and those issues unique to our area. Our team of experts includes Joe Sheehan, Greg Larson, Dave Floor, Brian Ritter, and a great variety of guests. The Dakota Housing Network begins now on SuperTalk 1270 and SuperTalk1270.com.
And good morning, everyone. This is Brian Ritter, your host on the Dakota Housing Network. I'm with the Bismarck-Mandan Development Association, and for the next hour, I'm joined by my friends from the Downtowners, Kate and Don.
Hey. Best friends.
Best friends. My BFFs.
That's
from
where
across
you got
4th
your
Street.
friendship bracelet from.
Thank you for noticing.
Yeah.
I'm glad you noticed the retro 1989 friendship bracelet that all of you
It's
in the radio
perfect.
cannot see, but I can assure you looks fantastic.
It's yellow
on me, right?
with, what is that, orange and black specks, just like they always
I
have
had
been.
a hypercolor shirt that was about that
Don't
same,
even start me on the great parts of the late 80s. I'll pull up my 8-bit Nintendo and we'll start this fight all over again.
Do it.
Well, we're back again here in the Dakota Housing Network on Super Talk 1270. As always, if you hear anything this morning you want to talk about, learn more about, call us here at the studio. Number is 663-1270. We're going to open this morning's show with my BFFs talking about Bismarck-Mandan by the numbers. As everyone I think knows, or I think a lot of you know, the Bismarck-Mandan Development Association is dedicated towards expanding the economy of Bismarck, Mandan, Burley-Morton County. And how else do you do that? By looking at numbers, right? You can't just drive around and do a house count. It doesn't work.
That would take so long.
Forever, right?
Oh, God, I lose count on my fingers and toes.
And toes.
I use them, too.
Tremendous.
To drive.
That's resourceful. That's what that is. That's resourceful. So let's talk about the size of the market. Let's look at the number of jobs. Because right now, the last estimate we have in Bismarck and Mandan, Burley-Morton County, is there are about 4,400 open jobs.
Wow.
I think that's a staggering number, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, it's
Absolutely.
a big number.
It's a big number.
And the weird thing is how much it's changed even in the last 2 months. From March to April, we added about 600 new jobs, plus or minus.
Wow.
And then between April and May, then those openings went up by another 300. So now here we are, end of May, 4,400 open jobs in Bismarck and Mandan. That's good for about a 3.9, 3.8% unemployment rate, which for us seems a little high, doesn't it?
It does nowadays.
I mean, when you experienced the last few years like we have, and
We're
you're
so
used to
spoiled.
nothing,
No
right,
kidding.
we are spoiled. But we've been down in the twos, and we've been in the twos,
And-
low threes, and all of a
yeah.
sudden, we get up to 3.9, 4%. What we have to realize,
Sounds a little
those
scary all of a sudden.
those are, and everyone asks about that number. When we put out this piece, we call it the Bismarck-Mandan Economy at a Glance. You can find it at our website at www.bmda.org. It's a collection of economic indicators, of which the unemployment rate is one. And this number we're using is the latest number. It's the March number. And what we have to tell everybody is, remember, in March, this is still really winter for us. I mean, it's not really building season for us. And so we always, because we live in North Dakota and it snows and it rains and everything else, you see that number always go up and down to kind of do some peaks and valleys around building season. So I expect that number is probably going to go down here over the course of the summer. Mm-hmm. In terms of where that number was last year, it's up a little bit. It was 3.4% last year at the same time. And so we're seeing some changes, but we're also seeing the labor force get bigger. In March of 2014, our total employment number, labor force number, was about 71,000. Fast forward 1 year, that number is 73,500. So that's encouraging news, because I think when Don and Kate talk to not only their members in downtown, but people around Bismarck and Mandan, and you talk about all those things that are happening in the community, people always ask, where are all the people going to come from? Mm-hmm. Where are you going to find all these people to work in all these places? Mm-hmm. And we'll talk about that more in the show. But a couple of things. One, it's going to happen gradually. It's not like we're going to need 4,400 people, tomorrow, and everyone bring your dog. That's not going to happen. It's going to happen gradually, and the labor force is getting bigger, so that's encouraging. And they're spending more money. They are spending more money, as you well know. We'll talk more about that later in a few segments. Sales tax collections, probably one of the better indicators we have in terms of how much money is being spent in Bismarck and Mandan. Year to date in Bismarck, about $5.7 million. Now remember, City of Bismarck, you've got your 5% state sales tax, you've got 1% from the city, and then you've got the county's new sales tax for the jail. Mm-hmm. So year to date, we're about $5.7 million. Last year, that number was $5.3 million. So you're seeing growth there.
Nice.
Mandan, a little bit down. Year to date, April 15, 777,000 versus 7,000 or 7. Let's start that segment over. $777,000 year to date, April 2015. $798,000 last year. So not a huge number. I mean, it could be due to even just one less weekend in the month in terms of when you have to report your sales taxes.
True.
And we try to tell people that. Look at the year-to-date numbers versus month-over-month. It just doesn't make a whole lot of sense that way. So we know they're spending more money. We know they're buying homes. I'm not in the housing market right now. I'm a realtor, but anybody, I mean,
I'm looking for a house.
how's that going for you?
Good Lord. Well, and I'm super picky, but I want something that's an essential part of the city, and it's tough to find something with a little character. But I'm glad that there are, those houses are opening up in other areas, and I think people then kind of shift, and it opens up what I'm looking for.
Well, I think the numbers bear out what Kate's talking about in terms of just being, kind of a selection, maybe being stock being even a little bit down, because right now, if we look at the number of single-family homes sold through the first 4 months of this year, well, 300 homes, 302 to be exact. Last year, that number was 350.
Okay.
I don't think it's because there's less people in the market.
Right.
I don't think it's because there's less demand. I think there's probably just less stock out there. Would you agree with that?
Oh, I agree with that. From what we see and talking to people, it still doesn't take very long for a house to be sold or snatched out from under you, basically. So I know it was pretty tough. I bought a house last year, and it was like, want it, get it now, basically. And I think it's pretty much the same.
That's where you've got to be.
Yeah, I think I overthink it. It's like, I want to look through, and by that time there's like 1,000 offers in.
I'm going to go home and watch a DIY show and see what I could possibly do to this. Yeah. Can I create a kitchen out of this garage? A second one? Now, and those homes are, I think as most people in Bismarck, Mandan know, they're increasing in price. I mean, there's no way around it. You've got less stock. You've probably got more demand out there. So now we're seeing home prices go up just a little bit. If we look through the first 4 months last year, through April of 2014, the average sale price for a single-family home that was sold through a realtor was about $242. Now, if you look at that same number this year, that's up to about $256.
Really?
Wow.
Now, again, these are it's a different markets a year later, but again, we're looking at $242 versus $255, and quite frankly, I think if a lot of us were out there and you saw a house for that $255 number, you'd probably look at it and go, yeah, I can probably. It's probably not going to be out there very long.
No,
it's probably not in this market.
Nope.
Now, another indicator. We can talk about new construction later, but one more we talk about as our community's grown, and obviously the downtown Bismarck's been a big part of that. Just look at how many people are traveling to our community, how many visitors we're generating. We can look at that through passenger boardings at the airport. Year to date, last year, 75,722 passenger boardings out of the Bismarck Airport. This year, that number is up to 82,713.
Wow.
So I think we can all probably chalk that up to, got a number of new visitors. Plus we've got Frontier flying now. Yeah. Plus we've got American Airlines flying now when we didn't have it last year. So all good things.
Greg and his staff have done an amazing job at the airport as well.
It is a big, big deal. So we are going to go out to a break. Producer Jim has got a solid lineup of tunes going for us. So we're going to take you out with the Temptations. We'll be back in a few minutes.
Currently, it's 55.
Get the traffic and weather information you need anytime on Super Talk 1270 and online at supertalk1270.com.
And we're back here on the Dakota Housing Network on Super Talk 1270. Again, producer Jim has a theme of Father's Day songs for us. And so if you notice a theme, it's on purpose. It's on purpose. And be sure to call your dad today. Do today, tomorrow, Sunday. Make sure you do one of these days,
one
right?
Day. Mm-hmm.
Lock it up.
Take them out, maybe give them some food or something.
Lock it up, Bismarck Band, and they've got options.
Give them a high five.
So we're here today. Again, my name is Brian Ritter. I'm your host this morning. I've got the folks from the Downtowners. Not really the folks. I mean, you're 2/3 of the staff, right?
Yeah.
We're almost
it's
all
almost
of it.
all the folks,
almost.
right?
Pretty much, yeah.
We've got Don and Kate from the Bismarck Downtowners here with us. And we're talking about the Downtowner Business Association. I mean, the who, the what, the why. Wait on me. Tell me. I mean, start. There it is. I mean, the elevator speech. I think everyone knows the Downtowners. I mean, you guys have been around for a while. Everyone knows the mission. It's right there in the name. But tell the listeners a little bit about the organization, what it is you're there for, who you support, who supports you.
Sure. Basically, the 30-second elevator speeches.
And start.
There we go. The Downtowners, essentially, it used to be kind of an event organization. We've always had membership, but we're really only known for putting on the street fair, which is now in its 42nd year. But I think when Dawn came on board, and she can speak to our membership a little bit more, we really wanted to start digging into, some of the issues and advocacy and development that we thought should be happening in downtown Bismarck. And was a good time when Don came on board that was starting to pick up, and we could really take advantage of, I think, a pent-up demand for some urban living and some urban type of activities in a rural, somewhat rural community. We're sort of a big town or a little city, one of the two, and we're kind of moving into little city. I
think that transition I think that's a perfect description of where we are at as a community, and certainly downtown's a big part of that transition.
Oh, absolutely, because downtown is where your history lies. It's where a lot of activities are. It's where large business sectors usually are housed. And so downtown is such an important part of the community, no matter what city or town you're in. Whether you're a downtown actually or a main street, that's basically where your business district either is or has started, and that's where all the memories are.
Because the BMDA office is in the Wells Fargo building downtown,
right.
The fourth
Across
floor,
the
we
street.
look directly down onto the downtown his office.
He watches us dance and waves every once in a while.
I can tell all the listeners that it's a very active office, and even in the time that I've been with the organization, certainly just as you described, you've seen a transition from being events-based to being more advocacy-based, policy-based. What else have you seen? What other changes? What type of things have you seen really your activities change? How have you seen them change?
Oh, well, okay, so I started in 2007. This is Dawn. And at 5 o'clock in 5 o'clock in 2007, the cars would just leave, and you could
roll
find
the streets up.
That's basically it. Shoot a cannon down the street, and you wouldn't hit anybody. And then all of a sudden, we had some really great new businesses. We had our anchors like Peacock Alley and Fiesta Via, and then all of a sudden we saw Pirogue and Blarney Stone and Toasted Frog come in. So it was really eatery based, bars and grills and that kind of thing. And then came the boutiques, and they started sprinkling in along with the galleries and that type of thing. And now you can't tell what time of day it is because the streets are always full. So I think that's one major thing that we've seen is the amount of traffic and the vibrancy just take off and increase and keep going.
I think what illustrates your point perfectly is my wife and I, some friends, Friday night came downtown, found a babysitter. So we started off at Lucky Ducks, had dinner at Lucky Ducks, then came down to the Toasted Frog, had dessert there because that chocolate molten lava cake is, I'm not going to, I told Jim I wouldn't swear in the air, but you know what it is. It's fantastic. And then we went to Fiesta Via. Just the fact that we as citizens of Bismarck could come downtown and do that and have those many options and be able to walk that whole thing, it's a huge change. Just like you illustrated, it's a huge change for our community. We haven't had that in the past.
And we really have two key demographics that are real good users of the downtown. We kind of have the baby boomers who grew up on a main street and are used to walking from place to place, and then we have sort of the millennials, sort of hipster generation that didn't grow up with that, but find it a novelty and like the destination and like that they can go place to place. So I think one of our big issues is, millennials have some pretty big demands on what they want out of their city, and connecting developers with what that might be, whether it's, smaller houses but in more compact growth or whatever they're looking for, usually specialty retail, specialty food, fairly high end, starting to make that for them so that they come here, move here, take these jobs, buy these houses. We have to cater to them to some extent. And they seem to be doing
so, and that's a fact. Now, you've talked about Downtowners 42 years?
The street fair.
Well, the street fair has been 42 years. I'm sorry.
That's right.
So
the Downtowners has been around a lot longer than that, actually.
Let's talk about street fair for a second, because you're talking to a kid who grew up in Bismarck, and I still call it Folk Fest. Okay,
sure. That's how we knew you grew up in Bismarck.
Color me guilty. Okay, I still call it Folk Fest, and I know a lot of people do, but certainly the street fair, everyone looks forward to that week in September, especially if you work downtown. You show up early to make sure you get your spot at work, and you don't leave for a solid 12 hours just because you don't need to.
Right.
I've got my map planned out. I know exactly where the mini donut guy is, where the pork chop sandwich guy is.
Brian calls in advance.
Then come back around to the Caramel Apple folks over on 4th Street. Yeah, we can make that all happen.
Oh, absolutely.
Talk to us about how street fair has changed and grown, because we've seen it grown tremendously, at least in my time here.
Right, and again, starting when I was there the first year in 2007, I think we had a lot of straight kind of crafters, or not necessarily the really. I don't know how to say this for sure, but not as much of a balance between something for everybody. But now we bring in these really great food vendors, and we have the local groups that are selling lefse and corn and turkey legs and that kind of thing. So we have this really great balance of something for everyone, where everyone loves food, and then people kind of spread out to go to the arts and crafts or crafters and that kind of thing. So we try to keep people there as long as possible. If you can get women to bring husbands or something like that for the food, then they'll usually stay and kind of meander around after that. But it's grown. We fill up faster and faster every year, and we're really diligent about finding the right vendors as well.
Now, I know that Urban Harvest is not a downtowners function. I understand that, but certainly it's right outside your window.
Yeah.
It very much feels kind of like a scaled down street fair. Do you think the growth of Urban Harvest has helped? I mean, draw some attention back to street fair, at least. I mean, try to get more people downtown, and it kind of bleeds over naturally. Created almost kind of a critical mass that way.
I think it was filling a need of a farmers market that happened more regularly in the downtown, and I think we're seeing a lot more local growers, and I think farmers markets could really grow in Bismarck and a few others. But I think that was the real grab, the real attention. You know, they open at 10 o'clock every day, and by 10:15 there aren't any,
there's very little
radishes
left.
left or whatever.
If you work downtown, you know that you need to be there. I mean, probably before 10.
Right.
Now, talk about, you guys also have a new festival. We have
so
a new
excited.
event. Can I call it a festival? Is that the right term?
Sure.
A festival?
You can.
Call it that? A soiree, a festival, a gathering?
I'm going to call it soiree from now on.
But you have a new event. Why don't you tell the listeners about that?
We, this year in July 17th and 18th, we are doing a new event called German Days. And this is really part of making Bismarck a little unique, calling back to something that's just, that says something about our community. So we're going to have all German beers, or at least from German, beer makers. So 2 are coming in from Munich, and then we have 6 from some domestic German makers.
Ooh.
Yeah, we'll have glass dimpled steins there, which are going to be awesome. So don't
what
drop
was that
it.
term you just said? A glass dimpled
steins.
stein?
Those are like the classic Munich Oktoberfest steins, or the glass dimples.
I'm sure you just made that term up, but that's
No,
all right. We'll let it slide.
We're doing all German food, all German entertainment as well. All polka bands, all cloggers.
That's right.
It's going to be like kitsch on steroids, or a small town wedding on steroids. That's kind of how Don's been describing it. But I think it's going to be a big event for us, and I think it'll expand our days and our locations, and kind of make it Bismarck's flagship German event.
And it's another event where you'll have to plan your day. You'll have to decide, do I want a schnitzel or a Fleischkegel for breakfast?
Why wouldn't I want to drink fried piece of meat for breakfast?
That's right.
That.
So we have, the food is just outstanding. It's German Russian or actual German food. And so you, like I just said, Fleischkegel, schnitzels, Bavarian pretzels. We have something called Runza, which is like a dough pocket, and then you stuff meat, potatoes,
You had me at
cabbage, cabbage, and then I think it's baked, not fried. So it's a little bit different than a Fleischkegel. Cheese buttons, 6 different varieties of cheese buttons. Oh gosh, I kind of run a Hassenpfeffer on a stick, which kind of is makes me a little sad, but I think it'll be interesting.
I think I can safely say that in the history of radio, in no segment has the term glass dimpled steins and then dough pockets ever been used so seamlessly.
That's right.
You've never seen it, but you heard it here first. You heard it here first, folks.
History in the making.
A stein hoisting contest too that the folks at Town Square are gonna work with us on. So
what is a stein hoisting contest?
Basically,
why is Jim raising his hand?
Yeah, that's right.
Jim's doing it. He's
Look at those.
He's practicing.
You basically have a 2-liter stein, and it's full of liquid, probably beer would be my guess, and you have to hold it exactly straight out in front of you. You can't break. Your feet are together. Your back's straight. And they try to get you to break a little bit, but we've seen some guys with huge muscles just fail in about 4 minutes. So
is there a dance contest?
There's polka.
There's one for Brian.
My Lord.
It's going to be called the Brian Ritter Novelty Dance Contest.
Thank God you didn't call it Brian Ritter Memorial Dancing Contest.
Can you polka?
Yeah, absolutely, I can polka.
He's from Wishick.
Is my last name? Yeah, my last name ends in a consonant. Come on, I mean, I can do that easy.
But this is a family-friendly event as well. I know we talk a lot about beer, but we're also doing Kinderfest on Friday, the first day of the event, from 2 to 4. And it basically, there'll be storytelling, There'll be music and dancing and that type of thing.
Grimm's Fairy Tales,
Yep.
which is super German.
So so I think everyone understands street fair. I mean, you come downtown, streets are blocked off, and you know kind of where you're at. I mean,
Right.
You got between 3rd and 5th. I mean, in Maine up to basically Thayer. You're pretty well set. Now, so tell me physically, what will German Fest look like? Or what will it look like?
It will be in the depot parking lot, which is kind of where the master plan has us planned for a big town square type area. So we're gonna show people what could be there and how awesome it could be and will be in the future. With
Now,
events.
for those of our listeners who might not recognize, the depot building is Fiesta
Yep,
V's
they're in
parking
one
lot,
half of
essentially.
it, and then there's another half of the building. But yeah,
I don't know.
And they'll be open during the German Days event as well.
All right. Well, we're getting played off here, but again, Jim is going to give us some Father's Day tunes to take us off into the next break. We'll be back in a few.
Currently, it's 55.
Get the app called Radio Pup for your iPhone and take us everywhere you go. Bismarck and Mandan's own Super Talk 1270.
And we're back. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Afternoon? Does that sound about right to you? My lord. Yeah, you heard us in the last segment. We're talking about a Stein hoisting contest. I'm reasonably sure it's just some sadist plot that the downtowners are hatching, but all right.
We do what we do.
So, again, I'm your host, Brian Ritter. We're joined today by Kate and Don from the Downtowners. Say hello.
Hi.
That was... Wow. I hope everyone didn't just swerve off the road right there because you heard that hello. We'll try. I mean, we'll get better. We'll try again later in the show.
Yeah.
We've been talking about developments in downtown Bismarck, and we've talked about the evolution of the Downtown Association from really an events-based organization to so much more. We've talked about policy, but certainly business development. I mean, something you guys are
definitely.
involved in now, and been very successful because I mean, you can't walk down a block in downtown Bismarck without seeing some new shop, some new restaurant, some new bar. Let's talk about it. Let's talk about the changes that downtown Bismarck has seen. Just talk about the restaurants and the bars, for example, because that really is, I think, if you're talking to people of any age, that's, I think, primarily what's going to bring you to your downtown. So let's talk about the change that we've seen.
And Don's really good about talking about our retail. In terms of our restaurants, yeah, they're a destination because everyone's got to eat. Everyone likes, drinking generally, and so that, usually that's the first step. That's what you see come into a downtown as it starts to revitalize. The restaurants will find the spaces, bring the mass of people down, and like Don said, it's kind of an onion. Then the retail comes, and housing should start to get sprinkled in with that. So we've seen a ton of new restaurants open in a variety of price ranges and things like that. One thing we'd like to see is a little more 21 and under. We do. It's not super family friendly at this point. But I think that's something that we'll work on in the future. But more and more coming, and they're doing specialty things using local ingredients, which again just makes them more of a destination for us.
Now, one of the things that you guys mentioned earlier about downtown after 5, or what it used to be after 5. But there's a lot of us. I mean, there's a lot of people who work downtown between 8 and 5, and it wasn't so long ago we didn't have that many options. I mean, when I first started, we had Fiesta and Peacock, and Simply Salads for a while.
Right, yeah.
The drummer had closed by then, so you didn't have the drumstick anymore.
We had Kathleen's.
We had Kathleen's there in his place, but you did. I mean, but you kind of rotated amongst the same 1, 2, 3 options. And again, back to Kate's point, that's changed now. I mean, you can go somewhere every single day if you want, somewhere different, and they're all full.
Yeah, absolutely.
They're all full. Now, Dawn, talk about the restaurants and the bars, things like that. New retail as well. I mean,
yeah, it's been really exciting to see these. I always like to call them these brave individuals coming in to live their dream, basically. And so we've seen some really great boutiques come in the past. Again, maybe like 4 or 5 years. We have a real. I'd say a good saturation of that. And so now we're looking at more like some niche shops as well. Gallery space has been just booming too. So now we have about 4 or 5 different galleries downtown. It's just great. We're looking at a concept store coming in, is what Terra Nomad is being labeled as. And that's kind of a crossover between an eatery with the retail partnership as well. So it's really fun. We are able to see people taking the effort to make a day of it, and they can spend a a whole morning shopping, go to lunch, shop some more, go to dinner, and then maybe catch a show or something like that. So really, downtown is a wonderful destination.
I think too, you see the things that do well downtown are specialty. You can't really, it'd be really hard to open something where you're competing with a Target or a Walmart. You need to specialize,
Right.
do it really well, and then just like Butcher, Black & Mandan is a phenomenal example of a great
Destination.
downtown business. So specialty works well. Jewelers, art, boutique, something where you need that experience from the owners and things like that, really get good service and specialty retail.
When you talk about that gap that those real specialty shops fill, one thing that we hear consistently when we're out doing business visits is one of the gaps being filled by those shops downtown, whether it's, Lot 2029, any others, Kitsona. That professional women's clothing, we hear that all the time,
Right.
and that gap being filled by those new shops downtown. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. I think that's why they've been so successful, is because of that. People really were looking for it, and now they're filling that need.
Not to be stereotypical, but women are generally early adopters of shopping places. So it's
I can't
harder.
help but notice she's staring. You're not in the studio. I understand that, but she's staring right at me when she says it.
We talked about men's retail, and that's
Annex
tough.
208.
Yeah, and men are just not big on shopping for clothes and stuff. So the women's retail tends to do better because women support it, and they support it early.
Oh, absolutely. Now, we've talked a lot about the commercial. We've talked about retail, talked about restaurant. But something else changing downtown, changing the face of downtown, is residential.
Yes.
I can't tell you how many people I've talked to. Certainly people want to some people want to live in South Bismarck or Northwest Mandan. Everyone's got kind of their own place where they want to be. But downtown Bismarck is one of those places that you hear people say, boy, wouldn't it be cool to live downtown. A lot of people don't even know there's apartments above the Blarney Stone.
Right,
There's some up there. But would you say that's because they fill up so fast? That people just don't find out about them because they're off the market so quick?
Absolutely. The demand is huge. We could absorb some hundreds more units of apartments and living space downtown very easily, I think. So we are in an unfortunate position that when we went through urban renewal, a lot of the buildings that you could do kind of an adaptive reuse, a warehouse or a hotel or something like that, those were torn down. And so again, a little unfortunate that we have to do new construction, which is usually quite a bit more expensive. And so we're a little behind Fargo, where they were able to do some adaptive reuse. We're really not able to do that so much, so it's going to have to come from new construction.
Do you think, it's kind of a chicken and egg argument. Do you think that the growth in residential has helped spur the growth in commercial that we just got done talking about? Or do you think it's been because there's so much more of a critical mass coming downtown that has spurred the residential growth?
Gosh, you're right, chicken and egg. Always when you have a critical mass of residents in an area, that will spur more growth in commercials, on the commercial side, obviously. But what we see then is once you have that critical mass is maybe different types of business will follow, like a corner store or something like that. I think that especially with like the boutiques and stuff like that, people or the owners saw the need in the community, and I think that came from probably the outside coming in.
I think remigration was big. I think the growth in commercial brought back people who grew up in Bismarck, kind of the young professional group. The economy was so good here, they were able to find a really good job here. And I think that spurred a lot of the residential growth. And again, that's one of our target markets, is a young professional. They might not make quite as much money. They don't have a big household yet, so living downtown is high up on their list. And I think, the growth in commercial just generally in Bismarck and Mandan really, the demand for residential then downtown grew out of that, I think.
Now, we've talked about a lot of things that make downtown Bismarck unique, and we could spend hours. And I know you two especially could spend hours talking about all the things that make our downtown special and unique when compared to others. In terms of how downtown helps make all of Bismarck, Mandan unique, especially the city of Bismarck, you look at the location. We had this conversation yesterday. Not many markets our size can say that you have your downtown, a thriving downtown, located adjacent to your event center, the Bismarck Event Center, adjacent to a more traditional enclosed shopping mall like Kirkwood. Do you, at least in your research and you looked around, would you say that that's accurate? That's one thing that makes us unique and has probably helped downtown grow?
Definitely. This isn't something that's seen very often, especially the adjacency to the like Kirkwood Mall, because most malls were built out on off of the interstate or something like that. So right now, I mean, downtown and Kirkwood Mall are 5 blocks apart, basically, and you have the event center right smack in the middle. So it's really a fantastic like kind of string of pearls to create that vibrancy.
The walkability is huge again among young professionals, and the fewer of them are getting their driver's license and buying cars, which is super strange, I think, to most people. But
especially
making it very walkable definitely makes us unique. And that was a decision that was made with the Civic Center in the mall 40 years ago, and we're just kind of, I think, reaping the benefits of having that proximity now.
One thing, going back to a topic we touched on a little bit earlier in this segment, we talked about, again, retail restaurant, we talked about residential. But that's one thing that we haven't seen a lot of, is a combination of those things. I mean, I think if people are used to traveling, going to larger markets, you see the quote-unquote mixed-use buildings, where you've got either parking on the ground floor, or you've got parking above, or you've got commercial on the ground floor with parking above it, or residential above it. In your opinion, do you think we'll see more of that in this market in the future?
Absolutely, and I think there are some, sort of zoning regulations and things that they're doing with the downtown core and downtown fringe that will make that happen. It's just generally more tax efficient. It makes it more walkable. You get so much more out of your infrastructure by going up than going out. So, and I think a lot of people want to. I think a big message for us is it's not downtown against the rest of the parts of the community. No. We're just a piece of the community puzzle, and we understand there need to be single family home development. And so we think we'd like to say the downtown is for everybody, because it is. It's your downtown. But that mixed use is very unique to the downtown. You're probably not going to see it much outside of those districts, for sure.
But as far as the popularity of the area, that will also spur these mixed use commercial spaces. So I think absolutely this will happen as space gets more and more cramped, if you will. There's not as much open area. So there's only up. You can only go up. But that's really what we like to see as well. And Kate brings up a great point of being really tax efficient. You see so many more tax dollars being generated by mixed-use space.
With little to no, infrastructure.
New infrastructure.
Yeah.
Well, where we started to hear the conversation a lot was after Stephen Carl Pine built Pine Plaza on the site of the former Wilhelm building. That was really the first new example that this community had seen for many years in terms of a true mixed-use facility. We have covered parking, commercial, and residential. So with that, we're going to get into our final segment here in a few minutes here on Super Talk 1270.
Currently, it's 55.
Our own radio station. Not Fargo, not the Twin Cities. Proud to be Bismarck and Mandan's own Super Talk 1270.
I think I'll color this man father. Color him father. I think I'll color him love. Color him love. Said I'm gonna color him father.
All right, now we're officially back. And as I was saying, producer Jim's Father's Day music theme, the Father's Day music train continues along with, is this the Winstons? I don't even know.
The Winstons.
The Winston. I can't say that.
69. Summer of 69.
Nice.
There it is. We're back here on the Dakota Housing Network. I'm your host, Brian Ritter. I am joined by the executive director, the 2/3 of the staff of the Bismarck Downtown Association, Kate and Don. And we're talking about all things downtown Bismarck today. And we left last segment talking about the growth in retail, the growth in the restaurants, the changes that have happened in downtown Bismarck. And it's overwhelmingly positive. It's overwhelmingly positive. And we were talking during the break. You've got some numbers that back that up. I mean, it's always easy. It's always nice to be able to quantify that type of growth. So let's hear them.
Yeah, it was just before we came on, we were just looking to see kind of what our numbers were with just Renaissance Zone projects. A lot of the small projects don't go through Renaissance Zone because it's not as big of an investment. But out of our 90 or so projects, they've created more than 400 full-time equivalent jobs. And the property values, the incremental increases, they've increased by about $50 million within the last 8 years. So up from about $16 million into $65 million or so in increased property value. So we're starting to see people come out of the program now that use the Renaissance Zone, which is a tax incentive from the state of North Dakota to rehabilitate buildings and build up the urban core. We're starting to see now the benefits of that, and that investment is starting to reap some rewards for the city and the state in terms of increased property values, but again, like we said in the segment before, we haven't added a lot of roads. We haven't added a lot of sewer. So we're just making it more efficient, which I think everyone in Bismarck is pretty happy about. If you can add value without putting more specials and roads and things in, it kind of helps everyone.
Well, that's a fact, and the case was made to me long ago that the basis for downtown redevelopment and making sure that your downtown and your core is strong is that if you don't do those things to encourage development or redevelopment to keep it strong, then you're going to see your downtown's not going to keep up, and your valuations are going to keep up. You're going to see decay happen, and then you're going to be reliant upon all the other areas of your community to essentially subsidize or help fund those improvements downtown, which is why you want to keep that core up, because you don't want to have to push all those costs off to other areas of the community that are growing to help them subsidize that one area.
And it also, if you don't keep up your core, city center, downtown, whatever you want to call it, you end up having this donut hole effect, basically. And so all of a sudden your city starts to become fractured. And it's kind of like, oh, that area, the south part, the north part, the uptown, downtown, old town, whatever part. But when you have a strong city center, it unifies everything, and it just makes everything run more smoothly that way.
I think also there's a lot of discussion about, and we hear it a lot, why are there these incentives for downtown? And there's a couple of reasons. One is we really hold the developers to a higher standard. There's materials that we only allow developers to use, masonry, brick. It's a very expensive building process. Windows, 50% windows on the main floor. I mean, there's a real control about keeping the district looking the way it should, and that really puts a lot of the burden onto the developer. And so these incentives come in to help, I think, offset that. And secondly, it's almost the opposite of what you were describing, which is instead of the outside subsidizing the inside, now the downtown's able to send money outward, which is great. Usually the Renaissance Zone program, on average, pays back their incentive in about 5.5 years, and then it's gravy for the city of Bismarck. In case of Steve and Carl Pine's Broadway Center building, they're going to pay their incentive back in like 6 months, because of the huge increase in the property value from $14,000 to some hundreds of thousands.
We've talked a lot about visitors, people who come downtown to spend their money, and very happy they do so. But again, that 8 to 5 population, some of our community's largest employers are located downtown. In the case of healthcare, you look at our 2 largest private employers in Bismarck-Mandan are Sanford and CHI St. Alexis, both of which are downtown and have thousands of employees 24 hours a day in that case, who are taking part in that downtown. We've got some other great employers in downtown Bismarck as well. We talk about
a really big financial sector. You see a lot of the local banks as well as national banks. They're housed in downtown. So just you take those populations between the hospitals and the financial sectors, plus you take all of the hundreds and to thousands of employees that are employed by the restaurants. It's just really staggering how many employees are housed downtown.
MDU as well, MDU resources. Obviously, they've got campus elsewhere, but a lot of the larger employers have a presence at least in the downtown area.
Now, you made a great point earlier in that downtown is a part of the greater Bismarck-Mandan community.
Absolutely.
It's the core. We've got tremendous things happening in North Bismarck and South Bismarck, Northwest Mandan. We're sitting here in the studio on the strip in Mandan, and you look outside, and it's incredible.
It's so
different. It's incredible how much has changed. I mean, whether it's the multifamily residential or the new Action Motorsports. But again, I mean, you guys have always been great about saying downtown's a part of it. Downtown's a part of what's happening here. It's a critical part. And especially as we look to fill some of those 4,400 open jobs in Bismarck and Mandan, we have to find things that set us apart from other markets.
Right.
It can't just be the job. It's got to be. You have to sell somebody on the community itself. Would you say? I mean, you've gotten feedback like that from employers that helps us sell this market to potential employees.
I think that's the biggest difference between a lot of other generations and the young professionals you see now is they move someplace for the entire package, the job, the social and cultural offerings, what it looks like. They would rather have maybe not so great a job in a great city than vice versa. And so we really need to be aware of that and make the city great, because they're looking at the overall package that can be offered, not just the job, but the whole experience.
So we've got a few minutes left here on the show today. And again, thank you very much to Kate and Don from the Downtowners for joining me. Let's take a few minutes and talk about, again, the Downtown Business Association. website, phone number, what's going on, how do they find you? Let's talk about all that.
Yeah, well, you can find us at the Stein
hoisting contest.
No, you will not find me there. You'll find me sitting down.
I think we will, Brian.
Yeah, the Downtowners, like Don said, we're celebrating 30 years of our incorporation this year, but we've been around since the early 70s, kind of as a loose group. You can find us on Facebook or Twitter. It's just Downtown Bismarck or downtownbismarck.com to get, you can sign up for our newsletter and all that fun stuff and see what's going on. Every day is different this week.
Gosh, oh my gosh.
Don and I are planting planters and also later on parking authority meetings, so,
Yeah, every week flies by doing something different. We're currently getting ready for the Art and Wine Walk, which happens next week. Yesterday, we spent a good amount of time putting up a fancy photo backdrop that people can, that attaches to a red carpet.
Oh, it's going to be awesome.
Yeah. It's fancy.
Can we talk about the wine walk for a second? Because
sure thing.
Before the show even started, and I know I should think my mom and dad went on it last year when we didn't go, but I mean, tell us about the wine walk because this sounds like a lot of fun.
I love the wine walk. It's one of my favorite events in downtown. Sometimes I wish we didn't plan everything so I could attend them. But
being staff.
It's really a great way for people to meet some of the business owners, experience what we have downtown. You get to go to over 20 locations, and at every location they have some food for you to try and a unique wine varietal. So you can technically have, like, if you really wanted to try all of them, almost a bottle of wine as you walk around for like 5 hours downtown.
Ounces, yeah. But it's you talked about being unique in Bismarck. Our membership is made up about 97% of local business owners or independently owned businesses. Mm-hmm. Even our McDonald's is owned by a gentleman, in town here. So you're getting really what downtown again can offer, and that uniqueness is that local ownership, which is great.
Well, there's kind of another unique development, and it's probably on the fringe of downtown, but the Bismarck Mandan Food Cooperative going into the old Snoopers building. For those of you listening to the radio, over by A&B Pizza, more Bismarck landmarks. So we tell people to go around. I know the three of us have talked about a downtown grocery store in the past.
Right.
I know this is a little bit off the beaten path in terms of what we're talking about here, but do you think that'll add some value? It'll add some value to what you're trying to accomplish downtown?
I think so, absolutely.
Sure, because again, this is something that will drive residential housing and get people to really notice that they can get everything within walking distance or biking distance or something, and they don't always have to drive to it. So yeah, I think this is really wonderful. Even though we have Little Dan's that's not that far away from downtown, this will be a little bit closer.
I think there's some indicators that downtowns use, like you need X amount of people living to really support a small grocery store, 4,000 people or something living in such a radius. And so we're not there yet, obviously, with our residential growth. We'd like to be a little further ahead than we are, but that kind of amenity is great to, again, for developers to see, okay, it can be supported. Residential can be supported fairly easily.
I bring up the topic of the food cooperative because that's again one of those amenities that if you would have asked us that question, I think anybody really that question 5 years ago or 10 years ago, could this market sustain or support something like that and raise the money they already have to make that store happen? And I don't know if I could have told you with a straight face that we could have.
Yeah, I think this was a kind of a dream at that point, something you would really want, but something that wasn't quite ready.
I think they're the fastest growing food cooperative in the country.
Right.
Well, if you follow them, and if you find them on Facebook, or I don't know if they're on Twitter or not, but I think it's almost on a daily basis they have a new co-op member.
Yeah.
And again, with that co-op model, it's truly a grassroots movement, and you've got people in the community who want to see this happen, who are taking it upon themselves to put in their $50 or their $100, whatever it is. So. Yeah. Well, the music means that we are nearing the end of our time today. Before we go, I do want to thank Don and Kate from the Downtowners for joining me.
Thanks, Brian.
We had a great time.
It was a great time. Yeah,
Thank you.
That's right.
Thank you.
You got a great voice.
You will find me at the German Festival leading the polka contest.
That's right.
You will find me there.
We saw some awesome examples, right?
Thank you.
During the break,
so
you guys are.
Do you have later
you guys are
in for it. Wear your later hosen.
All right, everyone. Thanks very much again for joining us here on the Dakota Housing Network on Super Talk 1270, and we'll talk to you again next time.